Hey, good Tuesday morning, everybody. Welcome into the Volquest podcast. I am Eric Kane alongside Austin Price, Brent Hubbs, and Rob Lewis. A big thank you to our friends Exterior Home Solutions for bringing us coverage of this podcast. For a free estimate, you can pick up the phone today and call them at 865-524-5888 or online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. If you need roofing adjustment, you need to put a new roof on, you need upgrades to your home, siding, windows, repairs, whatever the case may be, they've got you. That is Exterior Home Solutions. We got a lot to get into here today, but obviously spring football on the docket, some recruiting. But Rob Lewis, Tennessee basketball, Sweet 16 bound for the 10th time in program history. The second time ever it's been back-to-back years of the Sweet 16 for Tennessee. And it wasn't pretty, but it doesn't matter. Survive and advance, and Tennessee's moving on to play Creighton in the nightcap on Friday.
Yeah, the nightcap for sure. Everybody get your Red Bulls handy. But man, Eric, you said it best. I mean, I am sure the general's quarters was a mess in the second half on from Saturday night, but it doesn't matter. I mean, there's 16 teams playing college basketball right now. We're playing, whose seasons are still alive, and Tennessee's one of them. And it doesn't matter how you got there or what it looked like. All that matters is that Tennessee's still practicing today. They're going to get on an airplane, Wednesday, fly to Detroit, and as you said, only the second time in the history of this program that it's happened in back-to-back years, and that's significant.
Rob, when you look at this team, and are we at the point where you just don't make anything out of anything, right? It's just on to the next one. Is that kind of the bottom line deal, or are you looking for, are you looking for specific trends or things coming out of a game, or do you think, hey, you won that weekend, now you go try to win the next weekend, and they're completely separate of each other?
Man, that's how I think, Brent. And I'm not saying that there's no carryover, that you don't want to get hot and get some momentum, but I really don't. And Brent, me and you've done this together. I mean, it really does, change gears. I mean, when you go from Columbus, Ohio to San Antonio, I mean, it's a different tournament. I mean, I'm not saying that you don't, maybe keep if you're in a groove that some of that doesn't stay in, but it really every weekend is coaches look at it the same way. It's a different tournament. And so, I Coach Barnes, and I think a lot of coaches use the same euphemism. He was just like, our goal was to win the Charlotte Invitational. Now we want to go win, a 4-team tournament in Detroit. And I really think that each, little pod is its own, self-contained drama. And, Tennessee did what they had to do. They got through Charlotte, and now it's a whole new storyline.
Rob, don't you think that this next one's the hardest one? I mean, only one Tennessee basketball team has made an Elite Eight. So I mean, like you're getting into rarefied air if you can win this next one, right? Amongst the teams in Tennessee basketball history. It just feels like this next one is the biggest hurdle to climb, more so than the Elite Eight trying to get to a Final Four for the first time in school history, because you've only been to one Elite Eight.
Yeah, but I mean, for these guys though, I don't think they think like that. I mean, I don't think Dalton Connect is like, man, Tennessee's only been to one Elite Eight. I mean, I think he's thinking, I want to go to the Elite Eight. I don't think those kids carry that baggage. Maybe for the coaches or administrators, but I just think at this level, every one of them's hard. I mean, it's going to be a hard matchup with Creighton. Kind of a clash in styles, or at least, before having gotten knee deep into the matchup, it looks like it's going to be a clash of styles with a team that really likes to shoot, the three ball. So, I'm just not sure, AP, how much the mental stuff weighs on these kids. I mean, for the fan base, I mean, they carry it around for sure, like 1,000-pound gorilla on their back. But, again, I don't know. Zakai Zeeler, Friday afternoon is thinking, man, Tennessee's only been to one Elite Eight. I don't know that they process the stuff like that. But I think there's pressure. Don't get me wrong, for sure. But I don't think they're feeling the pressure because of what Tennessee's program has done. I think it's all coming from within, because they want to get the Elite Eight. They want to get to the Final Four.
Rob, I mentioned that it wasn't pretty. It doesn't matter. You just move on, and that's still true. But parts of Tennessee's game was pretty. That defense, which Rick Barnes prides himself on. Every team here at Tennessee's played good defense, and it's a top 3 defense all year long, pretty much. It did play well. It held Texas at 36%. It won the rebounding battle, forced more turnovers, points off turnovers, and resulted in, scoring more points in the paint and so on and so forth. But can Tennessee beat Creighton shooting 34% and 12%? I mean, I think more so than anything, you cannot afford to shoot 12% from beyond the arc again, right?
No, I don't think there's any question. And Hubbard, I mean, I was banging my head about it or making noise about it, but Hubbard actually went and found this stat, and we don't know for sure if it's true, but Hubbard dug it up on Twitter on some deep dive that, and I don't know, we can't vouch for the research, but I love the stat so much I'm going to throw it out there. Hubbard, what was it that there had been 66 games before Saturday night where a team shot less than 35% overall and less than 15% from the floor in the NCAA tournament. And those teams were 0-66. And now they're 1-66. So my point, I know Tennessee can't shoot that way again and win a game. It's only happened once in the history of the tournament. And I don't think they will. I mean, just, from statistically speaking, I mean, I think that's an outlier. I mean, if you just shot 3 for 25 from 3, I think the chances of you performing that badly again the next time out are pretty astronomical, and we'll see. But no, short answer, no, you can't shoot like that and win, and no, I wouldn't expect them to shoot like that again.
So, this is from Tennessee. Tennessee became the second team ever to win an NCAA tournament game while shooting under 34% from the floor and under 12.5% from 3-point range. So that percentage went from 15 to 12.5, but only the second team ever. So regardless, I mean, it is rare air.
We're talking historical.
Historical. And Brand, if Tennessee wants to, beat Creighton on Friday night, obviously you got to shoot a little bit better. But you need to continue to play defense and do a lot of what you did in this game because, again, it was good enough to win a game in the second round, and it's been good enough to win a whole lot of games for a whole lot of years for Rick Barnes.
Well, I mean, you got to score points, and every game takes on its own different life. But your defense has to travel, and Tennessee couldn't score points against Mississippi State in the SEC tournament, and their defense faltered as a result of it. I think the most impressive thing, as ugly as the game might have been on Saturday, is Rob, their defense did not slack off when the offense was just non-existent. The way it was really in the first half, in particular for Tennessee, they never let their offensive struggles affect their defensive intensity on the other end, which was a mature thing because I mean, it did affect them at Texas A&M in the SEC tournament. Now, I'm not sure their focus was where it was supposed to be in the SEC tournament versus the NCAA, but it says something about the fact they can play at that level on defense when their offense was struggling the way it is. You can't play like that through the whole tournament, but sometimes you got to win one ugly, right? Where things don't go well, you got to hang your hat on something, and Tennessee was able to hang their hat on their defense.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds cliche. And I mean, we talk about it on here. I mean, Coach Barnes talks about it, but man, that's really true. It is hard to keep playing defense when you just can't buy a bucket. I mean, the offense is fun. I mean, when you're a kid and you fall in love with basketball, chances are you fell in love with it because offense is fun. It's fun to make shots. It's fun to get out and run. I mean, defense is not fun when you're a kid, and you find out later on, if you like to win, defense is pretty important. And it takes a lot of mental toughness and character to keep playing that hard on that end of the floor when it's such a struggle offensively. And I just think, people really need to appreciate, what Tennessee did and being able to win that game when they were just so bad offensively. And that's really the first thing Coach Barnes talked about, post game. I mean, the first thing out of his mouth is the opening statement. He was like, man, and he's been around. He's like, this is one of those, you shoot it like that in this tournament, usually you get sent home. And that's, tip of the cap to my kids for, making sure that didn't happen tonight. Rick knew it better than any of us that, yeah, you make 3-pointers out of 25 in the second round, you're probably not going on. And they did. And I think everybody, in that locker room probably felt like they dodged one, and they dodged one because of their defense.
But a reason you have confidence also moving forward is because you have Dalton Knecht, because you have a guy like Zakai Zeigler that can change a whole lot of things up. I mean, this is a different team that is going on to the Sweet 16 than it was a season ago, whereas you didn't have that true number one, got to get a bucket, he's going to go and find it. Obviously a player that's played at a National Player of the Year type, caliber all season long, but you're also healthy, and despite the poor shooting performance, you should still have a whole lot of confidence that Tennessee can find the bottom of the net, on more than just an occasion moving on in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that are led by two guys that I think have basically a short memory. Like, okay, we didn't shoot it great. It's one game, flush it. New venue, new sight lines, new week, new opponent. And so I don't think that they'll be phased by any of this. I still think that, you need, you love the trio, right? Adu, Ziegler, and Connect. You still need somebody. Is it Joe? I mean, he had a huge clutch corner three the other night when he hadn't really done anything the whole game. Is it Santi? Is it Jordan Gainey? Is it Meshack? Who is it that kind of, is it a Waka? I mean, he played really well, the other night in his limited minutes when he wasn't in foul trouble. So, I just feel like this next game, I think it's a good matchup for Tennessee. If Creighton just doesn't just shoot the lights out and Tennessee's able to rotate defensively and be in position.
Hey, Rob, go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to say one thing. AP, you touched on Adu and kind of what's become Tennessee's big threes as the season's worn on. And everybody knows I'm a huge Jonas Adu fan and give him tons of credit for, Tennessee being where they are because of his development. But, man, he can't miss the bunnies. He cannot.
I agree.
He cannot miss the bunny. I mean, when he in a game like Tennessee was in the other night and like they're going to be in if they survive, I mean, 2 or 3 possessions here that you can't miss the bunnies. And, golly, man, he missed at least two, maybe that were not, I would say, not very high degree of difficulty for a 7-footer. And I mean, that's going to cost them.
I just wonder, I mean, a year ago it was, played lights out against Duke in the second round. And then in the Sweet 16 against FAU, you couldn't hit the broadside of the barn. I just wonder if it flips this year. If you got lucky because Texas couldn't hit the broadside of the barn either, and then you end up playing really well against Creighton. I just don't expect them to play the same. I expect them to bounce back. Do they win? I don't know, because Creighton can shoot it. But I don't expect Tennessee to put up the same performance offensively they did against Creighton.
Rob,
Creighton, yeah.
Rob, let me ask you this. I mean, Tennessee's got like 9 million people on the bench scouting and putting things together, but Kim English has played Creighton twice.
Beat them twice.
And they've beaten them twice. Is that a thing, or is it Tennessee's their own team? I mean, I know Rick Barnes and Kim English are good friends. Kim English came to Knoxville, watched Tennessee play this year. Is that an aid to Tennessee, or is that an overblown storyline that some people will put out there because Tennessee's got every resource in the world to prepare for Creighton?
I mean, I wouldn't make a huge deal out of it, but I think it'll be a nice little, feather. I mean, certainly. I mean, as you say, they have 1 million, people that, that can put in man hours breaking down video and whatever. But I don't, it's still, I think being able to pick up the phone while you're watching that video and, calling Kim and saying, hey, how did you guys defend this? Or what did you do with this? I mean, it may be a little thing, but it might be something that steals you possession, in a game. And in the Sweet 16, that could be, that might mean something. I'm just, I don't want to say it's like one of the biggest keys of the game, but I bet you Rick Barnes is glad Kim English played him twice this year. That's a resource.
It's got to be a help. I mean, how big of a help it is. I mean, obviously it's a guy that you call. Creighton's an interesting team. They don't have much of a bench, Rob. They don't play deep, but they don't foul. I mean, like they play without fouling, which seems kind of crazy to me. Can you attack them and really get to the rim against them, or is there enough rim protection without fouling? I think that's an important or an intriguing part of this matchup.
Well, the big kid, his name escapes me. I mean, he's not the most athletic guy, but man, he's pretty solid, rim protector. He's, I think Jonas matches up pretty well with him, but I think the point you make about them fouling Hummer is a pretty good one, and then they're pretty solid defensively, but they, they're not UConn or anything, but I was looking kind of just, getting ready to do the deep dive last night. And I think they give up like 66 points a game on the year. And that's not a result of, pace of play because they want to get up, they want to get up and down. I mean, it's, pretty high, they're not loyal to Marymount, but I mean, it's a pretty high possession game. They're not holding opponents under 70 because, they're playing a half court style. So that's one thing that I don't think Tennessee will have to worry about. And I think we can all agree Tennessee's been better when they haven't gotten in one of these bogged down half court games like, Vanderbilt did to them, Texas A&M did to him. South Carolina did to him when they beat him in Knoxville. So I think that plays the Tennessee advantage. But man, they're going to have to guard the perimeter. Creighton shot almost 1,000 3-pointers this year. I mean, they are not afraid. They led the Big East in makes. They make almost a dozen a game. So to Eric's earlier point, yeah, Tennessee better make more than three threes in this game, or they're going to be at a big disadvantage.
My key to this game is, Creighton's going to shoot the 3, Rob, but Tennessee's got to do a really good job of keeping them off the offensive boards, giving them extended possessions, giving them second and third looks. You go back to early in the year, some of those teams that gave Tennessee fits were the hungrier team on the glass, especially on the offensive glass. So that to me is a big key in this game. Is not because when you miss threes, the ball is going to normally bounce pretty wide. You've got to be able to go get it and be aggressive.
Rob, you went into it a moment, ago right there, just talking about the 3-pointers and the efficiency and all that, the volume that they've shot. Tennessee was a popular Final Four pick when people were filling out their brackets, obviously, but a lot of times they didn't have Tennessee going deep. They had Tennessee losing this game to Creighton. Any other reason why Creighton would be a pick here over Tennessee in this basketball game for the average fan?
I think for the average fan, I mean, don't sugarcoat it. I mean, they look at Tennessee and specifically Rick Barnes' success in March, and they have questions. We'll see. I mean, I think this team is built to do this. I mean, I think they're built to win this game and to play, for a chance to go to the Final Four. I mean, I don't think it's going to be a personnel issue. I mean, I think Jemai Meshack had a great quote about it, and I used it. Somebody may have read it Saturday night, and I was asking him in the locker room afterwards, like, man, does this feel different this year? I mean, you were in the exact same spot a year ago, except we were in Orlando. You just beaten Duke. You were going to the Sweet 16. But does this feel different? Jemai was like, yeah, man. I mean, this feels a lot different. I mean, and he looked over. He's like, we got Zakai's healthy. We got Dalton Connect, sitting over there. He's like, this. We feel like we're hitting on all cylinders right now. And, and he didn't come out and say it, but last year, I mean, it was a grind. I mean, getting to the Sweet 16 was a grind. Once Zakai went down, I mean, everything was hard once Zakai went down. And it's, this team's just built different. And getting to the Sweet 16 for this team was the expectation. And maybe even, to win one more is the expectation. Whereas last year, it didn't feel that way. Like beating Duke was like, big sigh.
Yeah,
we just accomplished. It doesn't feel like they've accomplished anything huge right now to me. And maybe I don't mean that as a negative or be critical. To me, what they've done right now is what they should have, what they're capable of doing.
Yeah, and what's funny about this time of year is perceptions just become such a reality, right? So everybody forgets. Really, Tennessee was a heck of an achievement to get to the Sweet 16, but because they were playing a 9 seed.
Yeah.
It was a choke that they didn't get to the Elite 8. Much the way this year, a lot of people have Creighton winning this game because Tennessee was a bad defensive team because of what Kentucky did in Knoxville in the regular season finale and what Texas A&M did to Tennessee. Suddenly, Tennessee was a bad defensive team because of those last 2 games, when in reality, they've been a good defensive team all year long. It's just funny to me how perception takes on its own life, right, Rob? I mean, McNeese was a popular pick, and then you go look at who they played, and you're like, why would anybody have picked them to win that game, right? I mean, like, there was nothing about their schedule that said they could play and advance in this tournament, yet some people were talking about them on the selection shows about, that's a sleeper Sweet 16 pick and all this other stuff. It's just funny how perception takes on a life of its own when you do this many hours of coverage and this much talking about the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. And I thought I made a snarky tweet about it, and maybe some people, actually saw it happen. But I thought a great example of what you're talking about is after Saturday night, late night, and I'm up late. I'm still writing, and CBS or TBS or whoever's doing it. But Seth Davis is talking about Tennessee. And he's talking about playing Creighton, and Seth is harping on, man, Tennessee just, they shot this, they shot that, blah, blah. They're going to have to do a lot better than that, or they've got no shot against Creighton. Meanwhile, 5 minutes earlier, Creighton had just been taken to overtime by the 11 seed in their region, and if Oregon could have made a front end of a 1-1, Creighton would have lost. And meanwhile, you flip to Jay Wright, and they ask him the same thing about Tennessee, and the guy who's won 2 national titles and been to however many Final Fours is like, man, haven't been there. When you shoot it like that in this tournament and you still get out of there with a win, I can't tell you what that does for your confidence. Watch out for Tennessee. I mean, just two totally couldn't be more different.
Yep.
And the one guy went to Duke, and his dad was Bill Clinton's lawyer, and the other guy has 800 victories.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, again, it's because there's so much talking about it. The perception just kind of takes on a life of its own, which is kind of crazy. My last thing to you, Rob, before I get out of some of the basketball talk, is are you? I guess you're not surprised, but I mean, we talk about each tournament, each pod, each weekend being different. This whole tournament's different. I mean, it's been battle ball, like just beat everybody up, just kind of totally let them go play, right? I mean, it's such a different style of game in the NCAA tournament than it is in the regular season in any league anywhere. When you watch games, or it feels that way to me. Is that right or not?
I mean, I probably didn't watch as much as you did of everything, Hubbard, at least on game day. But from the small sample size that I have seen, or not small sample size, but what I have seen, outside of Tennessee, I wouldn't disagree with that. I mean, I think it looks physical, and I don't think you see a lot of coaches complaining about it. Personally, I mean, I don't know that I go so far as to say that they're swallowing their whistles, but I mean, Tennessee and Texas, I mean, those are 2 physical basketball teams. I mean, they got big dudes, they got big guys inside, and I mean, I don't think either Tobe was in foul trouble, but I think he came back pretty honestly from where I was sitting, as he often does, and I don't think either coach had a big problem with the way that game was officiated.
Volquest.com will have you covered in Detroit for the Sweet 16. There's going to be a media availability on campus on Wednesday before the team departs, and of course a media availability early Thursday afternoon, and then that'll have to tide you over, because in well over 24 hours after that media availability, that's when Tennessee will tip off about an hour and a half before the midnight clock strikes. But nonetheless, Tennessee and Creighton Sweet 16 coming up on Friday night. Rob Lewis and Grant Ramey will have you covered, and Prime Video will have you covered as well. You need to sneak in those tournament games while you're at work. Prime Video has got you covered. Watch every game live on your phone, on your laptop. Relax and watch at home on Prime Video with a subscription. Prime Video gives you choices to add on channels like Paramount Plus and Max, both featuring NCAA tournament games all in one place. It's March, it's madness. Stream it all on Prime Video. So go ahead and check that out over on Prime Video. And if you have a Max subscription, it's there as well. I watched the ending to A&M in Houston the other night on my Max subscription, and you can too. Big thanks to our friends over at Exterior Home Solutions for making all this coverage possible. Let's get a quick word from them, and then we'll come back and talk a little spring football.
Severe weather can strike at any time in East Tennessee, and Mother Nature can do severe damage to the first and most important line of defense that you and your family have against Mother Nature, and that is your roof. Whenever she strikes, make sure that you call the people that I call. Make sure you trust the people that I trust, and that's my friends at Exterior Home Solutions, because they're more than friends, they're truly family.
Huge thank you to our friends over at Exterior Home Solutions for being the presenting sponsor of the Volquest podcast. Great people, big Tennessee fans, and they can help you as well. Local and trusted since 1999. That is Exterior Home Solutions. A lot of basketball talk. We'll get to recruiting here in a moment, but entering week number 2 of spring football, Brent Hubbs, and they've got 5 practices in the books already, 2 full padded practices, and tomorrow is a major day for the first scrimmage that'll happen over at Neyland Stadium.
Yeah, and we'll see what comes out of that, and sort of, again, I think this is more about where's your depth, who can help you, and who can't help you. And to me, Austin, when you look at the first couple of weeks, that's the thing that you're trying to figure out. It's not, you're not labeling anybody a starter. You're also not going to the extreme of, boy, this guy can't help him, or this guy's going to, he's going to take off and run with it. But you are trying to get a feel for what you think this team has beyond the knowns. And we know what they are on the defensive front, right? I mean, we know what they are in certain spots. But there's some unknowns with this team that starts to take its shape with this scrimmage on Wednesday. What are you looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. Looking for, some playmakers on the outside. You'd love to hear that some of these young athletes have made some plays at wide receiver. I want to continue to hear good things about Dante Thornton. I want to continue to hear some flash from some of those young kids, Chris Brazel. And honestly, I'd love to hear good things about linebacker and the secondary as well.
I think the one position group you didn't mention right there, Austin, unless I just missed it, and this is something that I'm looking for, these running backs, right? I mean, Cam Seldon's not going to play. You better not play a whole lot of Dylan Sampson. Deshaun Bishop, what do you got? Khalifa Keith, what do you got? Peyton Lewis isn't going to be playing. Tennessee needs to create some depth there at running back. And kind of on that note, because of how great the defensive line is and experience, this offensive line that's got some experience, but kind of, plug and play here in spring at the guard positions. And you got a new tackle and you're flipping a tackle over. And I'm sure Cooper May isn't going to play in the center spot. How much sustainability can you have offensively on Wednesday to give those running backs a chance, to give Nico a chance to get out there to the playmakers? Because you have such a stout defensive front and front seven, I think it's a great opportunity and a hard, showcase at least for some of those young guys that haven't played an awful lot or might be playing in different spots here in scrimmage number one.
Well, I think this is a fascinating decision that coaches have to make. When you think about this and you look at it, we talk about Cooper not practicing or not scrimmaging very much. Okay, they're young at the guard spot. But how much, Austin, do you throw Amari Thomas out there? Omar Norman Lott. Now, we know how Rodney is, right? We know what Rodney's – how he's going to go. Those guys are going to get some run. But how cautious are you of them versus, hey, Hobbs needs as much as he can get, right? The Moy kid who's transferred in needs as many reps as he can get there. We need to push the tank on Elijah Simmons as much as he can. So how much do you sort of take that big 3 or 4, Eason, Omar Norman Lott, and Amari Thomas and say, hey, get a series or two and let's get you out and start to work on some other guys? I think how much some of those veteran guys go is going to be pretty fascinating to view, not just in this scrimmage, but throughout the remainder of spring when you get into 11-on-11 work.
Well, I just don't think Rodney looks at it from a standpoint of like several of those guys have I don't think he looks at Bryson Eason as having arrived. I think he's going to put him out there as much as anybody. Same thing with Elijah Simmons, Omar Norman Lott. Honestly, Big O's probably the one guy that I think, probably they would feel comfortable, kind of just resting. But, he's going to play some. So, I think Rodney – I'm thinking if Rodney's afraid to take the foot off because it'll make them feel like they've arrived, and he never wants them to feel that way. You know what I mean?
That was pretty clear in his media setting on Saturday, wasn't it, Eric? It was pretty clear that don't act like we're any good. I like my room, I like my culture, but don't act like we've done anything to this point. So, with that being the case, I think it will be a challenge for the offensive line. And I think the running back, I think you're making a great point on the running back evals. You got to see where you're at, right? Because what do you look like if you lose one of your top 2 running backs for any extended period of time? What do you have? Do you feel like that Khalif Keith can do something, and can Deshaun? This is a huge opportunity for those guys, right?
No, it certainly is. And, Deshaun had a really good spring last year as an early enrollee, and he was honestly having a pretty decent fall camp. I'm not saying that he would have had a role in that running back room because it was already pretty stuffed to the brim, but Deshaun is practiced really well when healthy, and I think this is going to be a great opportunity to go and showcase that because you're exactly right. You've got so much experience gone from the roster now in Jalen Wright and Jabari Small. Dylan Sampson, you like him, but he's going to be your bell cow now, essentially. Cam Seldon is going to be, second fiddle to him, but he's still very raw at the position. What if one of those guys or both of those guys go down? It's just a lot of inexperience there, so it's going to be a great opportunity for those guys. One other thing I'll have on Rodney Gardner, it just made me think of it when you were talking. It's just how he is, old school. He's a veteran. He obviously knows what he's doing, and I think he likes his group and he likes the talent there and everything. But he's never going to let them kind of know that. He loves them. He's going to congratulate him. He's going to love them up off the field and everything. But, he's never going to, even if he thinks, man, we got probably a top 2 or 3 unit in the league or whatever. I like what I got. He's always going to, because nobody is ever perfect, and he's going to coach that way, saying, well, yeah, you did this well, but you did this wrong. there's not that many coaches like that anymore, and he's few and far between nowadays. So I think that a lot of those veterans will play in the scrimmage, whereas some other positions, like we said, Cooper Mays, I bet Keenan Peely won't get a whole lot of run. He might get some, but I bet he won't get a whole lot of run. Some of these receivers probably won't go. Of course, like Brew McCoy's not going to play, but it's going to be interesting to see who's out there and who can take advantage of those opportunities, because I like to call this, the Thursday following the scrimmage number 1 moving day. You'll have guys that'll go up from second team to first team or third team to second team or whatever, because it's just it's a great opportunity there with a whole lot of live action.
Agreed. I agree. I think, it's a real opportunity for several players that either have done just a little and flashed, or this is their first real run with the 1/2s. Like a guy like Sham Umarov, like this is a real opportunity for a guy like Sham. This is a real opportunity for Ethan Davis. This is a real opportunity for, Ricky Gibson, Andre Turrentine. Some of those guys played a little bit last year, but not as the full-fledged guy. And so this is a real opportunity for those guys to kind of, I won't say cement themselves, because I don't think that's accurate as spring ball, but definitely lay the foundation.
Well, and I think it's also a opportunity for a wake-up call for somebody too, right? Like some of those guys probably think they're further along than what they are. It's different when you're in the stadium and the coaches are all on the sideline and you're going at the breakneck pace that you want to go at. And, it's chaotic, right? And this is an opportunity for those guys to kind of get a true feel for where they are, right? And so I just think it's number 1 of what do they have, 3 this spring. I know they scrimmage a lot, in situational stuff kind of every day on the practice field, but probably going 3 major scrimmages, with the last one being the spring game that doesn't count. So you really have 2 major scrimmages to kind of show yourself here. And this is number 1. So this is a real opportunity for a lot of guys. I think it's a huge scrimmage for Holden Stays. Where's he at in knowing this offense? You mentioned Ethan Davis. AP, I would put him in that category. It's a big scrimmage for that entire tight end position group. And then I look at individuals like Sham, Aiden Bussell, where are those guys on the offensive line? We know Hurd's going to be their left tackle. We know Campbell's going to be their right tackle. That's pretty clear. Do they have a backup center, right? I mean, this is a big scrimmage for a guy like Bison Lang. Where is he at in his ability to play the center position for Tennessee? Because you got to come out of spring, AP, with an answer at backup center, right?
Right now, I think their backup center is Dane Davis.
Yep, I would agree.
Maybe. I mean, but you have to know coming out who your backup center is. I don't think they did a year ago. I think they were hoping it was going to be Addison Nichols, but I don't think they knew. And I think based on what happened to him last year, you got to come out of spring knowing if we have an injury in week 1 or week 2, this is where we're going. And I don't know that they had that answer at the end of spring practice last year.
AP, you've had this safety nets with Jerome Carvin, with Ollie Lane, with Dane Davis a little bit. Say you leave spring and Bison Lang, William Satterwhite, whoever, just you don't feel good about it. Say you give him opportunities early in camp, you don't feel good about it. And say that truly, Dane Davis, if something were to happen, he would slide down because he's your most experienced guy. Man, I mean, it's like Dane Davis ain't going to be on the roster in 2025. I mean, you got to go Portland, right? I mean, you're to a point to where you've got to find somebody and develop somebody, because Cooper Mays, Dane Davis, Ollie Lane's already off the roster. I mean, they're all about to leave.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to start pushing some of these high school guys into some key roles. Either that or just abandon high school recruiting and recruit portal guys one. I mean, I do think it's a big spring. Even if you said, okay, Dane's gonna be my just ultimate, Swiss Army knife guy, you still got to find some guys that are like that for the future.
AP, let me ask you this, and Eric answered this too, because Buzz, you right observation there that you guys we've all been at what little practices we get to see. Give me the 1 or 2 things that you feel like you've learned about this team that you didn't know before spring practice started. Big picture, small picture. Give me a nugget or 2 that you think they're this, and I wasn't sure they were this.
I'll go. They're more athletic in the secondary than what they were, in my opinion, and because they forced a bunch of those guys, even I don't want they didn't force everybody, but because some of those guys left and some other guys were encouraged to leave, it's a new look secondary, and there's just a lot of new blood in there that's going to play this fall.
I was gonna say I like what I saw from the secondary as well. It just, again, from what little we get to see, it just looks quicker. It just looks faster, more athletic. I'll say this about the wide receivers: we know the talent that's been there, and we'll see how they produce in scrimmages and whatnot. But I mean, I've been really impressed from what I've seen from Dante Thornton and little we've been out there. Been really impressed from what I've seen from Caleb Webb. I mean, those guys are further along in the system. Some of these new guys. We've talked about Braylon Staley standing out, but some of these veteran guys that you're not really mentioning their names much anymore when you talk about the Brews, the Squirrels, the Chris Brazzles coming in, the Mike Matthews, the Braylon Staleys. I've been impressed with this veteran group of wide receivers, and I think this is something that's going to carry on over into fall, the fall camp, to where it's going to be a real battle out there, and we'll see kind of how big that rotation is. I guess what I'm trying to say is I've been impressed with the veteran afterthoughts at receivers right now, because I think they've had a pretty good spring so far.
Here's the interesting thing for me, and I don't know this. I want to be careful not to overhype something, but it feels like they have a chance to have hit pretty well again in the portal. And there's so much talk, Austin, about Tennessee's late in the portal. What's Tennessee doing in the portal? Why aren't they doing anything in the portal in early December? And there's the gnashing of the teeth because there's this former 4-star that's in the portal, or this former this, and Tennessee doesn't seem to be doing anything type deal. And I want to be careful because I don't know that they've hit, but boy, there's some positive feelings about Jacoby Thomas and McCoy and Stays and Hurd. Even Moy from Stanford. It feels like they have a chance that their portal movement is a real roster upgrade. I think it's too early to declare that, but boy, it feels like it's got a chance to be that way to me. I don't know if that's right or not. Maybe that's me, just seeing new faces and they're more mature bodies, and you get like, okay, that guy can play. But it feels like they've done okay in the portal.
Hubs like Fox and CNN calling the election at 8:02 after the polls closed. Yeah. I mean, I'm with you.
Well played.
I know. I'm just playing. Everything you just said, I agree with. It certainly feels that way. It feels like they have put themselves into the position to have landed some guys that are going to be a real impactful on this football team this fall. Again, really it appears to be really solid work in the portal again. I think it's interesting. Everybody says, well, you want the last visit, you want, first visit. With this particular group of guys, honestly, if you look at it, McCoy, Stays, Hurd, Brazzle, they all went and took other visits after they came here and still ended up picking Tennessee. I found that interesting because sometimes when they get away from you, you're like, oh, I got no shot now, and it just with this group, for whatever reason, they kept coming back to Tennessee.
Don't you think NIL changes that vibe though, in terms of whether you need the first one or the last one? Because the NIL world can be the neutralizer, right? Like you could be quote late to the party, but get yourself in the party with an NIL deal. Or you can be first to the party, and if you're not where you need to be NIL wise, you can get thrown out of the club, right? You can get sent outside of the parking lot in a hurry. Do you think for transfer kids that the NIL factor kind of outweighs whether you're first or last?
I mean, yes. I don't think it's a tried and true, method, but at the same time, I sure wouldn't want people going to other campuses.
It's true.
Because look, hey, what's your offer at Tennessee? Oh, okay, we'll give you this here, and all of a sudden they can just swoop in. Something like it.
Yeah.
Yes and no. I don't think it's definite. I don't think it's definite either way.
Good point.
I'll tell you somebody I'm excited to hear how he performs in the scrimmage, because again, we're not going to see any of it. going back to that transfer talk, it's going to be Holden Stays because, I think I like this group of transfers to your point. I think Lance Hurd has a chance to be really good. Of course, he's going to be super important for this offense. Man, Hubs, I'm going to continue to beat that drum that we've been beating on. Man, Holden Stays tight end position so critical in this offense because for the first time in a decade, you don't have Jacob Warren on this roster. Of course, a guy that's been here, done that. You are bringing up a freshman and baptizing him by fire in Ethan Davis, who has all the talent in the world, but he's your most experienced guy at the spot, and you're bringing in this new guy. So I'm intrigued to hear how Holden Stays does in scrimmage. One, knowing that it won't be a finished product, knowing you got to move on and continue to get better. But that position, that role is going to be so important for this offense, and it's got to hit. No ifs, ands, buts about it. If Holden Stays doesn't hit, then it's going to be that much harder for this offense to get back to where it needs to be and being a top 10 offense and one of the best scoring offenses in the country.
Yeah, and I think too the other thing, AP, is a guy nobody talks about in the transfer portal, and I don't think he's a superstar. But I wonder how much the kid from Alabama that transferred in at the tight end position can he be a security blanket as your third tight end if somebody's banged up. You know what I'm saying? He's a mature guy. He's an older, more veteran guy. Can he step in? Maybe not be dynamic, but is he a forgotten guy that's going to have a role and is going to be counted upon at some point for this team this fall?
He's definitely a forgotten guy because he's down the list when you think about transfers.
Miles Kitselman, and we'll see. Again, I think it depends on what you're getting out of Ethan Davis, what you're getting out of Holden Stays. I think if those top two ball out, I think Kitselman will find trouble getting on the field, so to speak. But if any one of those stumble, I mean, he's in position.
All right, so Tennessee spring practice, it is ongoing. Scrimmage number 1, that is coming up tomorrow. It's going to be an important day, and, of course, we'll be covering it, telling you what we hear, all that and more. We'll tell you what Josh Heupel had to say, all that at Volquest.com. Hey, before we call it quits here on the Volquest podcast, I do want to talk a little recruiting. It is decision week coming up later in the next couple of days for in-state defensive lineman, highly talented prospect from Ensworth High School. That is Ethan Utley. Austin Price, where are you the week of Ethan Utley's decision?
Well, it certainly feels like Tennessee's got some momentum there. Texas has swung hard, Michigan as well. But he's really close with Dylan Lewis, the Tennessee linebacker commit, dating back to his time as a kid in Atlanta. Obviously, George is continuing to work Ethan as a mid-state, private school guy. And so it feels like Tennessee's got some momentum there.
And then you look at this past weekend, you and Brent and Matt were over on campus. A lot of guys in and out. A couple of guys that wanted to highlight here, Desan Brame, Eric Winters, Shady Hayward, to name a few. What do you like about those guys and kind of how they took this Tennessee visit? And what do you think their thoughts are leaving campus?
Yeah, we'll start with Brame. Brame, to me, is Tennessee, Oregon. A lot of it, I think, depends on where he wants to play at. Kids from kind of middle of the United States, so he can kind of go either direction. Really good-looking prospect, an elite tight end to potentially pair with Jack Van Doorslayer, the current Tennessee commit, who was here this past weekend as well. As far as Eric Winter, that one, Coach Chop has done a really good job of getting Tennessee in position with him. Done a really, really fantastic job. I think Tennessee is surging. Are they the leader? No, I do not believe that, but I think they're a team that's ascending in his recruitment. Auburn, obviously, as the in-state school, is one you have to watch, as well as Georgia and Ole Miss. And then as far as Shady Hayward, Tennessee's been in a really good spot there for a while. Georgia's going to come take a swing here, and he's going to take some visits potentially to Alabama and others. But I think right now, as we sit here in late March, Tennessee is positioned well with the young man from Georgia.
You got a scrimmage coming up tomorrow. Probably not a whole lot of visitors are going to be here for that. If I'm wrong, tell me. But also you got Easter weekend coming up. No one's going to be here. Recruits will start filing back in next week. Who are some of those other – say what?
The 6th is big. The 6th is big. Perdarius Jackson will be here. Douglas Utu, the big offensive tackle out of Las Vegas that Tennessee's started to make a move for. That the weekend of the 6th will be big. in recruiting. And then, of course, for the spring game, David Sanders, the number 1 offensive tackle in the country, will be in town from Charlotte.
Plenty going on right now. Brent Hubbs over at Volquest.com. Tennessee's run to through the NCAA tournament on to the Sweet 16 in Detroit. Got Tennessee baseball happening right now, just coming off an SEC a win over Ole Miss this past weekend. Got spring football. Got recruiting that never stops. People who are listening to this show right now, we thank you. But if you're not a member, you're missing out. Great value over at Volquest.com right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a recruiting fan in particular, I mentioned this over the weekend. I mean, if you weren't around the message board on Saturday, you were missing real-time updates that Austin and Matt were just churning out on the message board. It's the easiest place to drop the notes in there, and they were churning them out real-time as stuff was happening, stuff like that, right? I mean, notes and during the middle of basketball games and in baseball games, the threads, just the interaction that we have going on the site during those times is really big. And that's where, we're going to drop things as quick as we can, as early as we can, because that's the easiest place to drop them in there for everybody. So you want to be a part and not miss out on those things among all the stories and podcasting and everything else that we do. It's just a great interactive place to hang out. It's comical at times. It can be a little bit maddening at times, but it's the pulse of the Tennessee fan base, right? And it's all the emotions that swing wildly during recruiting and games and everything else. So you want to be a part of that at Volquest. You don't want to miss out on it.
You could say that, swing wildly during games, the good, the bad. Yeah, you can say that,
but it's much like the Volquest staff group text.
Yes. It is a blast for sure. You want to be there, and it's your number 1 spot for any Tennessee news and Tennessee conversation. For Awesome Price, Brent Hubbs, Rob Lewis, who was with us talking basketball earlier in the show. I am Eric Kane. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks to our friends Exterior Home Solutions for being the presenting sponsor of this show. Local and trusted since 1999. Pick up the phone for a free estimate. You can call this number. It's 865-524-5888, or visit them online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. Appreciate you guys for being here. We'll talk to you Thursday on the Mailbag Podcast. This is Volquest.com.